My dear friends, in life, we often think that making noise, proving our worth, or constantly speaking about our abilities will help us achieve what we desire. But the truth is, real growth often happens in silence. The seed does not announce its sprout. The sun does not make noise when it rises. Silence has a power that words cannot match. When you learn to stay silent, you conserve your energy. You protect your dreams, and you let your actions speak louder than your voice ever could. Silence is not weakness, silence is strength. It is not an absence of power, it is the presence of wisdom. Those who know when to speak and when to stay quiet are the ones who truly rise and gain everything they dream of. When we speak of silence, many imagine it as an empty space, a void, or even a sign of weakness. But in reality, silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not weakness, it is strength. Just as water gathers its force in stillness before flowing as a mighty river, silence gathers our energy so that when the right moment comes, we can channel it in the direction of our dreams. Think about a battery. Every device we use, whether it is a phone or a laptop, depends on stored energy. When the energy is drained by unnecessary usage, the device shuts down and cannot serve its purpose. Our minds and bodies are no different. Every thought we speak, every argument we indulge in, every meaningless conversation we involve ourselves in, drains our inner battery. The question then arises, where is our energy going? Is it fueling our dreams, or is it being wasted on words that add no value? There is a story of a sculptor who worked tirelessly on a piece of stone to bring out a beautiful statue. Day after day, he focused on his work, quietly chiseling, silently shaping. Many people would pass by and ask him what he was doing, why it was taking so long, or when it would be finished. But the sculptor did not waste his breath explaining. He simply continued his work in silence. After months, when the statue was revealed, it spoke louder than any explanation he could have ever given. His silence had preserved his energy, and that energy had transformed into art. The same principle applies to us. Every time we argue unnecessarily, gossip about others, or defend ourselves endlessly to those who are unwilling to understand us, we deplete the very energy we need to chase our dreams. Silence is not about suppressing words, but about choosing where to invest our energy. It is about asking ourselves, is this conversation worth my strength? Will it bring me closer to my dream, or will it scatter my focus? Think of an athlete. Before the final race, you will not find them talking endlessly about how fast they can run. They are silent, focused, storing every ounce of energy for the moment the whistle blows. When the race begins, their actions do the talking. Their silence before the race becomes the fuel for their performance. In the same way, when we hold back unnecessary words, when we refrain from exhausting ourselves in trivial matters, we preserve an inner strength that can be poured into action. Sometimes silence also means saving our energy from negativity. How many times have we tried to explain our dreams to someone only to receive discouraging words in return? If we keep trying to justify ourselves to everyone, we waste the very fuel needed to walk the path. Silence in such moments is not defeat, it is wisdom. It is choosing to conserve energy rather than squander it on those who cannot see our vision. When we understand that silence is preservation, we begin to see that every word has a cost. Just as every purchase we make reduces the money in our account, every unnecessary word reduces the strength of our spirit. But when we save that strength, it grows, it multiplies, and when the time comes to act, we find ourselves powerful, focused, and ready to transform our dreams into reality. So, silence is not an empty pause, it is stored energy. It is the quiet reservoir that fuels determination, clarity, and action. When we learn this, we stop wasting energy in words and start investing it in deeds. That, my friends, is how silence preserves energy and helps us gain everything we dream of. Silence is often misunderstood as nothingness, but in truth, silence is the soil where focus grows. When we live in constant noise, whether it is the noise of people, distractions, or even the noise of our own restless thoughts, our attention scatters in 100 different directions. But when we learn to be silent, the scattered fragments of our mind gather together, and suddenly our focus becomes sharp like a beam of light. That sharpness is what takes us closer to our dreams. Imagine a magnifying glass under the sun. The rays of the sun are always present, but they only become powerful enough to burn a piece of paper when focused through the lens. In the same way, our mind has enormous energy, but without silence, it is scattered. We may dream of many things, but our energy keeps leaking into endless distractions, conversations, and worries. Silence acts like that magnifying glass. It channels our mental energy into one clear direction, and when that happens, we gain the ability to achieve even the most impossible goals. Think about a student preparing for an important exam. If the student sits in a noisy place, surrounded by constant chatter, notifications, and interruptions, the mind keeps wandering. But if the student finds a quiet place, away from distractions, the same effort of 1 hour becomes 10 times more effective. Silence transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results because it clears the clutter around us and within us. Many great achievers have understood this. Writers often isolate themselves when they are creating their best work. Musicians retreat into solitude to compose melodies that touch his soul. Thinkers, inventors, and leaders of history often had moments of deep silence in their lives where their focus was refined. Their silence was not emptiness, it was concentration, it was preparation, it was the sharpening of their inner vision. We often underestimate how much energy we lose simply by being distracted. the constant need to respond to every word, defend every opinion, or share every thought scatters our focus. When we talk less and listen more, when we withdraw from unnecessary noise, our focus naturally strengthens. Silence does not only mean the absence of sound around us, it also means the ability to silence the restlessness within. The moment the inner chatter reduces, clarity begins to rise. Consider the story of an archer. Before releasing the arrow, the archer does not rush. He stands still in complete silence, eyes fixed on the target. His body is motionless, his breathing steady, his attention undivided. In that silence, his focus sharpens, and with a single release, the arrow flies straight to the center. If the archer were distracted, if he allowed noise to disturb his mind, the arrow would miss. Our dreams are like that target. Only silence gives us the stability to aim with accuracy. Sometimes we think multitasking brings progress, but the truth is, divided attention brings divided results. Silence teaches us the beauty of single tasking, giving all of ourselves to one thing at a time. Whether it is studying, working, creating, or even spending time with loved ones, silence deepens our presence and makes the moment meaningful. That presence is focus, and that focus is what builds success. In the journey of life, silence is the anchor that stops the ship of the mind from drifting aimlessly. It holds us steady so that we can navigate with clarity. The more we embrace silence, the more we realize that our focus does not get stronger by force. It grows naturally in stillness. And when focus deepens, the path to our dreams becomes not only visible, but also achievable. Life often presents us with situations where words become weapons. A single sentence spoken in anger, a harsh reply to criticism, or a careless remark can create conflicts that last far longer than the moment itself. Many times, relationships are broken not by great betrayals, but by small words spoken without thought. In these moments, silence becomes not just a virtue, but a shield. Silence does not mean surrender. It means choosing peace over pointless battles, thick of a spark landing on dry leaves. If left alone, the spark dies out quickly. But if we blow on it, it grows into a flame and soon into a fire that consumes everything around it. Arguments are like that spark. A small disagreement may begin harmlessly, but when both sides keep adding words, harsh tones, accusations, and defensiveness, it grows into a fire that burns trust and damages bonds. But silence has the power to extinguish the spark before it becomes a blaze. There is an old story of a wise man who was once insulted in front of a crowd. People waited for him to respond, expecting an angry reply or at least a defense. But he simply smiled and remained silent. When someone later asked why he didn't retaliate, he replied, "If someone gives you a gift and you refuse to accept it, who does it belong to?" In the same way, insults, harsh words, and provocations only hurt us when we choose to accept them. Silence is a way of saying, I refuse to accept this gift of conflict. When we remain silent in the face of provocation, we may feel we are losing the battle of words, but in reality, we are winning the battle of peace. Silence gives space for anger to dissolve. It prevents the situation from escalating. Often, after the storm of emotions passes, people themselves realize their mistake. But if we had reacted with equal aggression, the situation would have only worsened. Think about our closest relationships with family, friends, or colleagues. How many times have arguments left scars that could have been avoided if silence had been chosen instead of retaliation? Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, the ego demands we respond, we defend, or we prove ourselves right. But silence teaches us that not every battle deserves our energy. By staying quiet, we save not just our peace, but also the bond we share with others. Silence also allows us to listen better. During conflicts, instead of planning our next response, if you remain silent and truly listen, we often uncover the pain or misunderstanding behind the other person's words. That awareness softens our heart and prevents unnecessary arguments. A silent listener can calm a storm faster than a loudspeaker ever could. Even in larger matters of life, silence helps avoid conflict. Leaders, negotiators, and peacemakers throughout history have used silence as a tool to de-escalate tension. A pause before responding, a calm silence in the face of anger. These are not signs of weakness, but of great strength. They show that silence has the power to disarm hostility and replace it with reflection. At its core, silence teaches us this truth: not everything needs a reaction. Not every provocation deserves a reply. Not every argument must be won with words. Sometimes the greatest victory is in walking away peacefully. By choosing silence, we protect our mind, our energy, and our relationships from the unnecessary weight of conflict. Respect is something every human being desires, but few truly understand how it is earned. And many people think respect comes from speaking louder, proving oneself constantly, or showing authority in every situation. But in reality, respect is not demanded. It is commanded, and silence is one of the most powerful ways to command it. Silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of dignity. Think of a wise elder sitting in a gathering. They may not speak as much as others, but when they finally share a thought, everyone listens. Why? Because silence creates weight. The fewer words we use, the more value those words hold. A person who speaks endlessly often loses the impact of their voice, while a person who stays silent until the right moment automatically earns attention and respect. There is a story of a teacher who once entered a noisy classroom. Instead of shouting for silence, he simply stood quietly at the front, looking at his students with calm eyes. Within minutes, the students began to quiet down on their own. The teacher didn't need to raise his voice. The power of his silence carried more authority than noise ever could. This is the nature of respect. It flows to those who can control themselves. In our daily lives, we often feel tempted to prove ourselves with words. If someone doubts our abilities, we rush to defend ourselves. If someone underestimates us, we feel the urge to boast. But the truth is, real respect is not earned by defending or boasting. It is earned by allowing actions to speak. Silence in such moments is not weakness. It is a quiet confidence that says, I do not need to prove myself with words. My actions will show who I am. Consider great leaders or role models. They are often not the ones who speak the most, but the ones who speak the least and act the most. Their silence commands respect because it shows restraint, patience, and self-mastery. People are drawn to those who don't waste words, but use them sparingly, with meaning and thought. Silence also protects us from disrespect. The more we talk, the more chances there are for misunderstandings, careless words, or unnecessary arguments. By choosing silence wisely, we avoid lowering ourselves into trivial disputes. This dignified restraint makes others respect us more, because respect is not just about what we say, it is also about what we choose not to say. Think about how water behaves. A shallow stream makes noise, but a deep river flows silently. Similarly, and God, people who have depth of character do not need to announce it. Their silence reflects the inner strength, and that quiet strength attracts admiration. People naturally respect those who carry themselves with calmness and self-control, because such individuals radiate stability in a world full of noise. Silence also shows humility. Instead of interrupting or trying to dominate conversations, the silent person listens. And when we truly listen, others feel valued. Respect flows back to those who give it first. A silent, attentive listener often earns more respect than the loudest speaker in the room. Ultimately, silence creates an aura. It makes people curious, attentive, and even inspired. When you speak less but live with integrity, people naturally begin to respect you, not for what you say, but for who you are. Silence, therefore, is not emptiness, it is presence. It is a language of its own, one that tells the world, I am at peace with myself, and that is why I do not need to shout to be heard. And that kind of silence will always attract respect. Patience is one of the hardest virtues to cultivate in a world that glorifies speed. We live in times where everything is instant. Instant food, instant information, instant communication. But dreams are not instant. Success is not instant. Growth is not instant. Anything truly meaningful in life takes time, and to endure that time, we need patience. Silence becomes the training ground where patience is born, nurtured, and strengthened. Think of a farmer who plants a seed. The farmer does not dig it up the next morning to check whether it has sprouted. He knows that the soil, the sun, the water, and time will do their work. His silence in waiting is his patience. In the same way, our dreams are like seeds. We may sow them with effort, but we must give them time to grow. Silence teaches us to wait without constant complaint or anxiety. When we are silent, we resist the urge to react instantly. Silence puts a pause between the stimulus and the response. That pause is where patience lives. For example, when someone provokes us, silence helps us hold back from reacting in anger. That moment of silence gives us time to reflect, to think, and to choose a wiser response. Without silence, impatience takes control, and impatience often leads to regret. Many people abandon their goals not because they lack ability, but because they lack patience. They want quick results, immediate recognition, or instant rewards. But life does not work that way. Silence, however, calms the restless mind and reminds us that slow growth is still growth. It whispers to us that waiting is not wasting, it is preparation. Just like a butterfly struggles in the cocoon before it learns to fly, we too must endure the silent waiting before our dreams take shape. There is an old saying, silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. Patience is a form of wisdom, and silence is the soil in which it grows. When we stop rushing to speak, when we stop rushing to defend ourselves, when we stop rushing to force outcomes, silence teaches us acceptance. It teaches us to trust the process instead of forcing it. That trust is the essence of patience. Think of water dripping on a stone. A single drop does nothing. But the same drop falling consistently over years carves through rock. That is the power of patience, and it can only be built when we embrace silence. Impatience seeks shortcuts, but silence teaches us perseverance. It keeps us steady in the journey, reminding us that real strength lies not in speed, but in endurance. Even in relationships, patience is built through silence. When someone we love makes a mistake, silence prevents us from lashing out instantly. That silent pause gives space for forgiveness to enter. When misunderstandings arise, silence allows emotions to settle before words are spoken. In this way, silence not only nurtures patience, but also protects bonds. In spiritual practices, too, silence is considered essential. Sitting quietly, away from distractions, allows the mind to slow down. The restless thoughts gradually settle, and the heart learns to wait. This inner waiting is patience in its purest form, a trust that things will unfold in their own time. So often we think silence is passive, but in truth, silence is active training. Every moment we remain silent when the world tempts us to rush, argue, or force, we are building patience. And patience, once nurtured, becomes the foundation upon which great dreams, deep relationships, and inner peace are built. Clarity is something every human seeks, yet very few truly attain. Our lives are often filled with noise, external and internal. Externally, there are voices of society telling us what we should become. Advertisements telling us what we should buy. and people around us constantly giving opinions on how we should live. Internally, there is a louder noise. Our doubts, our fears, our regrets, and the endless chatter of the mind. In all this noise, it becomes difficult to hear the most important voice of all, the voice within. Silence is the doorway through which we access that voice. Imagine standing before a lake on a windy day. The surface of the water is disturbed, rippling constantly. No matter how hard you look, you cannot see your reflection clearly. But when the wind dies down and the water becomes still, suddenly the reflection appears in perfect clarity. Our mind is that lake. When disturbed by endless noise, confusion dominates, and we cannot see who we are or where we must go. Silence is like the stillness that calms the water, allowing us to see ourselves clearly. Many times in life, we feel stuck. We wonder, what should I do? Which direction should I take? How can I overcome this challenge? In such moments, we often rush to ask others for advice. While guidance can help, true clarity never comes from the outside. It must arise from within. Silence gives us the space to listen to ourselves. It clears away the dust of confusion and helps us discover what we truly want. There is a story of a young man who once approached a wise guide, asking for advice on which path to take in life. The guide took him to a quiet forest and asked him to sit alone under a tree until the evening. The young man grew restless at first. The silence felt heavy. But as the hours passed, he began to notice the sound of the birds, the rustle of leaves, the rhythm of his own breath. Slowly, his mind calmed. By evening, without the guide saying a single word, the young man knew in his heart the path he had to take. The silence itself had given him clarity. This is the power of silence. It does not always give answers in words, but it creates the space for answers to rise from within us. When we stop filling the air with endless speech and stop allowing the mind to be consumed by distractions, we begin to recognize the gentle whispers of intuition. That inner guidance is always present, but it can only be heard in silence. Clarity also means distinguishing between what is important and what is not. Life throws countless things at us: opportunities, responsibilities, temptations, and distractions. Without clarity, we chase everything and achieve nothing. Silence teaches us to sort through the noise. In moments of quiet reflection, we can ask ourselves, what really matters to me? Which actions align with my values? What can I let go of? Silence simplifies our inner world, and in that simplicity, clarity naturally emerges. Even in times of chaos, silence becomes the anchor. When problems overwhelm us, instead of rushing to find quick fixes, if we pause in silence, the mind begins to see solutions more clearly. Stress creates clouds, silence clears them. And with that clear vision, we can take wiser, more effective steps. Clarity is not about having all the answers at once. It is about having enough stillness within to take the next right step. Silence nurtures this clarity gently, like the dawn that gradually reveals the world with light. And when we walk with clarity, our path becomes smoother, our decisions wiser, and our dreams closer to reality. In a world where everyone wants to announce their plans, broadcast their dreams, and prove their worth with words, silence becomes a rare and powerful choice. True achievers do not spend their energy declaring what they will do, they simply do it. Silence turns actions into statements, and those statements are louder, clearer, and more lasting than any words ever could be. Think of a young athlete who constantly talks about how great they will become, how many records they will break, and how many medals they will win. Their words may impress for a while, but if they fail to perform, the words lose meaning. On the other hand, imagine an athlete who trains quietly, says little, and shows their strength only on the track. When the whistle blows and they sprint across the finish line in victory, that one action becomes a statement stronger than 1,000 boosts. Silence transforms action into undeniable proof. There is a saying, work hard in silence, let success make the noise. It means that the energy we waste in talking can be better invested in doing. Words are easy, actions require effort, discipline, and consistency. When we remain silent and let our results speak, we build a credibility that no speech can ever replace. People may doubt words, but they cannot deny actions. History is filled with examples of people who turned their actions into statements through silence. Think of inventors, artists, and leaders. They were not busy trying to convince the world of their greatness. They were immersed in their work. When their creations, discoveries, or movements emerged, the world listened without them saying much. Silence gave weight to their actions, and their actions echoed louder than their voices. Even in our personal lives, silence has this power. Suppose someone insults us and we remain calm, choosing not to retaliate with words, but instead responding later with success. That success itself becomes the loudest reply. Silence in the moment of conflict saves our energy, and our achievements later become the statement that silences critics. Instead of saying, "I will prove you wrong," we quietly go and succeed, and that success does all the talking for us. Consider also the way silence makes actions more memorable. If someone constantly promises and announces what they will do, expectations rise and disappointment often follows. But when someone quietly delivers without pre-announcing, the impact is much greater. Their silence creates an element of surprise and depth that makes their actions stand out. Silence also protects the purity of our intentions. When we speak too much about our goals, we sometimes begin working for approval rather than for the dream itself. But when we stay silent and act, our energy remains focused on the work, not on how others perceive it. The action becomes more authentic And authenticity is what truly resonates with people. Think of nature. The sun does not announce that it will rise, yet it brings light every morning. Flowers do not declare that they will bloom, yet their fragrance fills the air. Trees do not announce their growth, yet they silently reach towards the sky. In the same way, our lives become most powerful when our actions quietly shine without the need for constant words. At its essence, silence turns actions into living proof. It shifts us from talking about possibilities to showing realities. People may forget what we say, but they will never forget what we do. And when our silence is filled with consistent, meaningful action, our life itself becomes a statement, louder, stronger, and more inspiring than any speech could ever be. Dreams are delicate in their early stages, like young plants just beginning to sprout. At that time, they need protection. If exposed too soon to harsh winds, they may wither before they grow strong roots. In life, negativity often acts like those harsh winds. When we speak too early about our dreams, we invite criticism, doubt, and discouragement from others. Silence, however, shields our dreams, giving them the safety they need to grow strong enough to withstand the outside world. Many people lose their dreams not because they lacked ability, but because they exposed their vision too soon. They shared it with those who did not understand, who perhaps laughed, questioned, or discouraged them. Words like, "That's impossible," "You can't do it," or "People like you don't succeed in that," often plant seeds of doubt in our minds. And once doubt takes root, even the brightest dream begins to fade. Silence protects us from such influences. By keeping quiet, we guard our dreams until they are strong enough to shine on their own. There is a simple story of a bird building its nest. If it announces loudly every time it places a twig, predators will know where the nest is forming and may destroy it. But the bird works quietly, twig after twig, until the nest is complete. Only when it is ready does the world see the finished creation. Our dreams are much like that nest, fragile at first, but powerful when complete. Silence keeps them hidden from unnecessary negativity while we quietly build. When we speak too much about our goals, we sometimes also lose focus. The energy we spend talking could be invested in doing. And the more people know, the more opinions we receive. Some may support us, but others may unknowingly discourage us with their skepticism. Silence gives us a shield, a safe space where our vision can grow without interference. Think about inventors and creators. Many of them worked silently, away from the world's judgment until their work was complete. Imagine if they had announced every experiment, every failure, every trial. The negativity they would have faced might have crushed their spirit. But by staying silent, they allowed their work to mature before sharing it. Their silence was not secrecy born of fear. It was protection born of wisdom. Even in personal life, Silence helps. Suppose you decide to change a habit like waking up earlier, exercising, or starting a new project. If you announce it to everyone too soon, people may mock you when you struggle or remind you of your failures. But if you quietly build the habit day by day, by the time you speak of it, the results will already be visible. Silence shields you from the discouragement that often comes when you are still vulnerable. Silence also protects us from our own impatience. When we talk too much about our dreams, we sometimes feel as if speaking is the same as achieving. We enjoy the applause of announcing, but the real work remains undone. Silence keeps us grounded, reminding us that success is built in action, not in words. At its heart, silence is not about hiding forever. It is about choosing the right time to reveal. Just as a flower does not bloom before its season, dreams too must unfold when ready. Until then, silence is their shield. It gives us strength, focus, and protection from negativity, ensuring that by the time our dreams meet the world, they are unshakable. Learning is the foundation of growth, yet many of us block our own path to wisdom without even realizing it. We assume that speaking more, debating more, or proving ourselves in conversations makes us smarter. But the truth is the opposite. Real learning begins when we learn to be silent. Silence is the posture of humility. It is the space that allows knowledge to flow in. A noisy mind cannot receive wisdom, but a silent mind is like an open vessel ready to be filled. Think of a classroom. A teacher can only share knowledge when the students are quiet. If every student keeps interrupting, speaking over one another, or arguing endlessly, nothing is absorbed. The act of listening in silence is what allows understanding to grow. In the same way, life is the greatest classroom, filled with lessons in every moment. But we only learn from those lessons if we quiet ourselves long enough to observe, to listen, and to reflect. There is an old story of a wise guide and a young seeker. The seeker came to learn wisdom, but spent the entire time speaking, explaining what he already knew, arguing about ideas, and showing off his knowledge. After a while, the guide poured tea into the seeker's cup, filling it until it overflowed. The seeker cried, "Stop, it's already full." The guide calmly replied, "Yes, and so is your mind. Unless you empty it with silence, nothing new can enter." That story reminds us that silence is the first step to true learning. It empties us of arrogance and makes room for wisdom. When we stay silent, we give ourselves the gift of listening. And listening is one of the most powerful ways to grow. By listening attentively, we can learn from the experiences of others without having to make all the mistakes ourselves. We can gain knowledge from books, teachers, mentors, and even strangers. But to listen, we must be silent, not just outwardly, but inwardly, silencing the constant urge to respond, to argue, or to prove ourselves right. Silence also deepens observation. Life is always teaching us through small details. The way nature functions, the way people behave, the way situations unfold. But when we are too busy speaking or rushing, we miss these lessons. Silence slows us down, sharpens our awareness, and allows us to see what others overlook. Many great thinkers, artists, and leaders have admitted that their insights came not in moments of noise, but in moments of still, silent observation. Another gift of silence is that it helps us learn from our mistakes. Often, when things go wrong, we rush to justify ourselves with words. But silence allows us to pause, reflect, and ask, what can I learn from this? That reflection is what turns failure into wisdom. Without silence, we repeat the same mistakes. With silence, we extract lessons that help us grow stronger. Silence also makes us better learners in relationships. Many conflicts could be resolved if we simply listened more and spoke less. By being silent, we allow others to express themselves fully, and in their words, we discover their needs, fears, and truths. This silent listening builds understanding, and understanding is the greatest teacher of all. At its heart, silence is the bridge between ignorance and wisdom. It is the soil in which the seeds of learning grow. The world is full of knowledge, but it only enters us when we open the door of silence. The quieter we become, the more we hear. The more we hear, the more we learn. And the more we learn, the wiser and stronger we become. Every human being carries within them two voices. One is the loud outer voice, the voice of desires, fears, and the endless demands of the world. The other is the quiet inner voice, the voice of wisdom, intuition, and truth. But because the outer voice is noisy, most people never hear the deeper one. Silence is the bridge that allows us to leave behind the noise and connect with the higher self within. Our higher self is not something far away or mystical. It is the best version of us that already exists inside. It is the part of us that knows whatever is, even when we are tempted by wrong. It is the part of us that whispers encouragement, even when the world shouts doubt. Yet, in the business of life, we rarely pause to listen. Silence opens that space. When we quiet the outer world and the chatter of the mind, the voice of the higher self becomes audible. Think of a radio. If the frequency is cluttered with static, we cannot hear the music clearly. But the moment we tune it properly, the music flows smoothly. Our mind is the same. The static of noise, stress, and constant thinking keeps us disconnected from our deeper wisdom. Silence tunes the frequency, and suddenly we hear the music of our soul. That music is guidance and strength coming from our higher self. There is a story of a man who always sought advice from others. Whenever faced with a challenge, he would run to friends, family, or even strangers, asking what he should do. One day, a wise teacher told him, "Stop asking others and sit with yourself in silence." The man resisted at first, for the silence felt uncomfortable. But slowly, in that quiet space, he began to hear his own inner guidance. For the first time, he realized that the answers he was seeking outside were already within him. The silence had connected him to his higher self. When we learn to connect inwardly through silence, we gain strength that no external source can provide. Life will always bring uncertainty, loss, failures, or unexpected challenges. If we rely only on the noise outside, we will constantly be shaken. But if we anchor ourselves in silence and touch the higher self, we discover a calm center that remains steady despite storms. That calmness does not come from avoiding problems, but from rising above them with inner strength. Silence also brings us closer, gratitude and peace. When the noise fades, we begin to notice simple blessings. The rhythm of our breath, the warmth of the sun, the presence of loved ones. Gratitude awakens, and with it, a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. That connection is not just to the higher self, but to the divine spark within us, and the part of us that is limitless, peaceful, and unbreakable. Even the greatest spiritual traditions of the world emphasize silence through meditation and prayer or contemplation. These practices are not about emptiness, they are about fullness. They remind us that silence is not a void, but a doorway. Through it, we step into the richness of our inner world and discover who we truly are beyond our roles, titles, and possessions. At its essence, silence is not just a practice, but a relationship with ourselves, with our truth, and with the higher self that guides us. The more we embrace silence, the stronger that connection becomes. And in that connection, we find wisdom, peace, and the courage to live in alignment with our highest potential.